This program documents the January 7th to 13th, 1990 Rainbow Uprising campaign, opening this decade with a scientific spiritual revolution of consciousness to change the course of human history off of the path towards total destruction and onto the path towards paradise on earth, by bringing out the fundamental teaching of nonviolence, the medicine of Namu-myoho Renge-kyo, the first United States installation of the Hiroshima Peace Flame at the UCSB campus, and a spiritual unity summit on nonviolence featuring speakers including traditional Hopi interpreter Thomas Banyaka of the sovereign Hopi Nation and Mohawk Chief Jake Swamp of the Iroquois Confederacy, who remembers the late Nichidatsu Fujii.
I met with Guruji Fuji many years ago during the longest walk, and he brought inspiration to our people, and he drew attention from the ones that were suppressing us at that time. It started to come together. I think we feel that the works in the past has started to bear fruit, and we can hope in a future for a world peace. We have to teach our little ones the new mind. Many people have strayed from their teachings wherever they come from. We have to bring the minds back together, in common with one another, in how we view our world. And that is how we're going to arrive at a world peace.
The Rainbow Uprising opening ceremony was conducted by Choi Slow, a Shan of the Chumash on-top priesthood.
We have to speak strongly in front of those who are not yet educated about what it is to learn to be a conscious being and to become more and more conscious And if you know about humbleness every day, if you sage yourself, you'll realize the truth of how many mistakes you made in one day. Good luck in your efforts to find world peace. We're striving from this side, from the Western Gate side, to make sure that this happens also.
The Chumash people were also represented by Grandmother
It's
Ilula.
always good when people come together and stand in a circle and pray for peace and unity. Both Jake Swamp and Thomas Banyaka have visited this area many, many times, and the land and the people and the spirits always welcome them. Say welcome. We're glad you're here.
American Peace Movement organizer David Crockett Williams, the inspiration for the Rainbow Uprising.
Of the death of the most venerable Nichidatsu Fujii, from whom Mahatma Gandhi took up the medicine word of Namu-myoho Renge-kyo that has come from the people of the land of the sun in Japan. This medicine that was left centuries ago for this time to bring the natural law, awareness of the natural law to the mind of the people and purify the earth, take us to peace on earth. And this teacher, Nichidatsu, who died 5 years ago at the age of 100 years old, was a man from whom Mahatma Gandhi took up the drum and the chanting of this word to lead the spiritual revolution in India to success. So
The teaching of the Most Venerable Nichidatsu Fujii is that the American Indian people must take the lead in the world peace movement because of their kind of karmic relationship to the United States government, which is seen as the principal evil in the world because of its initiation of the nuclear threat and continuous pursuit of this nuclear terrorism. And so basically the Japanese monks understand that everything is based on recognition of natural law, and that natural law is behind the traditions of the American Indian spiritual people. And so as the people of the world recognize the sovereignty, the jurisdiction of the natural law, then they're also going to be recognized the sovereignty and the cultures of the Native American people as well.
Our country.
Hopi interpreter Thomas Banyaka visits with the Santa Barbara Middle students during the Rainbow Uprising campaign.
Prophecies foretold that there is someone among white brothers going to invent so many things and be used in a destructive way and destroying one another, animal, birds, and plant life, trees. And we're going to create natural disasters by doing it. Be more earthquake, more flooding, severe droughts, severe winters, seasons changes so much, and then we create things that pollute the air. So smoke up there, poison air, and chemical stuff released is kept getting higher, but it's now coming down, lower and lower. The Six Nations knew that tall trees were standing straight one time, but now they're going to bend because the poison air is coming closer. They're going to bend. But eventually they're going to start drying up on the top trees, and pretty soon the whole tree will die from poison air, poison rain, acid rain coming down today. So much things will disturb this land that Hopi knew, and it's up to the younger generation. It's up to you people, younger people who are now coming. What kind of life you're going to face in the next 10, 15 years from now on? If we continue to manufacture those destructive things, terrible things in the world, and just for money, profit, just to hold on to the power that leaders have today. In another world, they said that's what happened. Spiritual leaders, political figures, they got all the money, power, and whatever they have in their hands, they don't want to let go of it. Everybody knows they're doing something wrong. They're not telling the truth, but they won't admit their wrongdoing toward last days. And that's what's going to happen in this land someday. But it's up to the people now to really clean up their mess and maybe change some of the leaders who are not doing the things that's right. In this country, as I say, you are a citizen of this country. You are able to vote those leaders in Congress, and you pay taxes to them, and they're supposed to be your servant. We don't have to fight anymore. We don't have to use war. We can use with the spirit within us. You can sing and laugh and enjoy life, and you can carry it if you talk to their leaders from the heart, and eventually they're going to put that aside. That's the way we're supposed to clean this mess up. Today, you see thousands of our people landless in their own home country. They have no food, no job, so much discrimination. Everybody look at what you call Indians today as savages, heathens, or cannibals. If we were cannibals at that time, I don't think any white people would be here today. We eat every one of them when they come in. But we were not that kind of people. We know they were coming. We know they were our brothers and sisters, so we welcome them. I found out that those big, supposed to be intelligent people in this country, like George Washington, Hamilton, and those big men up there, they misspell a word too, because I know when white people came, they always look for gold. They rush to anything to get the gold. They come out here, build railroad and anything, get wagon, horses, they come grab that gold. And they did down in South Central America too. They're always looking for gold, so I'm sure that they were going to put that word in their dollar bill or silver dollar. In God we trust. But they misspelled it. They're supposed to put gold in there. In gold we trust, but they misspelled it and left that L out. But Hopi means actually peace, peaceful people, humble people, truthful people. who are willing to work together with each other, with family and community, who act like they know what it's all about. They act like real peaceful people, and they can be called Hopis. Any people who act like that, they refer to as a Hopi people. So I found that gathering of the spiritual people around the world coming together. So I think this is very important that we document this.
The Hopi Prophecies predicted the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as today's threat of nuclear holocaust, which was also predicted by the prophecies of Japanese Buddhism from the Lotus Sutra. Tibetan Buddhist prophecies also correlate to the Native American people, according to Tibetan monk Khenpo Kartar Rinpoche.
Said that when the iron bird flies and horses on wheel started running, then the Buddhism will flourish in the land of a red face. So it is that which I think those are the very predictions seem to be coincide what is happening now.
Rinpoche remember and Nichitatsu Fuji and the Japanese monks.
Yamato, a Zen Buddhist monk from Japan, participated in a purification ceremony in San Francisco with Thomas Banyaka and His Holiness the Dalai Lama just before the October 89 earthquake. Reverend Yamato has been asked to escort Banyaka to India to visit and meditate with the Dalai Lama before the August 25, 1990 Peace Pagoda opening ceremony in Ladakh near Tibet.
This is the Dalai Lama Gek. I want to visit the Hopi land. This is a received message.
He hasn't heard anything. It is very good news.
Reverend Yamato has just brought word from Sogyal Rinpoche of the Dalai Lama's intention to visit the Hopi land. Hopes are expressed to the Rinpoche, whose monastery is in Woodstock, New York, in the territory of the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, that Chief Jake Swamp will also travel to Tibet, planting trees of peace to fulfill the Iroquois spiritual ability of uniting all the nations in peace.
The symbol of the tree of peace. So it's my hope that we can take a delegation of Native American religious leaders to go to this ceremony in Ladakh, and on the way to plant the trees of peace, and most especially, hopefully, to go and do this in China before going to Ladakh, in the hope of bringing a reconciliation between China and Tibet.
Do you have something to add to?
Yeah, I think it's very important that the people who understand the workings of the universe and the people that believe in peaceful ways should come together. And at the same time realizing that my young people in the world today are confused.
Yes.
That we should somehow reach out to them and make sure that they learn the teachings of the natural world and how to respect the universe.
Yes.
Even though the leadership, the religious leaders and their helpers are in some cases oppressed in their own areas, they must be disciplined to be above it and to continue the work, no matter how negative it is around, that we must all be tolerant. We know that it's going to take many years of working with one another to try and bring some kind of a peaceful order. But today I feel strengthened, and I will report it back to our people that we have found a connection that is very important.
A kiva under construction in Santa Barbara was host to a sunrise ceremony conducted by Thomas Banyaka, after which he was interviewed by local television personality Tony DeMarco.
These are some also another way that they know that we are part of this movement.
Now, why they chose you to be the interpreter for the Hopi message?
The Hopi elders, religious leaders, traditional people I talked to in 1948. They can't speak English, and they're 80, 90, 100 years old men, first time gathered for 4 days, and they want to bring this message to the world's attention of things that they knew coming in the future. They talk about life before this one before that, and way back. And today, we, the living people on this earth, are descended from a handful of people who escaped that last total destruction by flood, came to this Mother Earth here. And so there are warnings given to people now on this last earth to make it last, this never be destroyed, but it's up to the people.
Banyaka, who you're seeing here, we're hoping will become nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's been doing courageous work.
Separate German people here, one people, but they're separating by this wall. But over there, they're separate. Hopi and Mohawk, we used to freely move around together, and there are a lot of intermarriages, but now they got 5 strands of barbed wire stretched across the land. So I said, I hope this won't be crumbling down by next year, and if you break this down, get together, you Russian people and the German people get together and come over to my Hopi country and tear down that fence. We don't need that either. So that was a good idea. I said maybe they will do that now since the wall is down and everybody's coming together. Every nation wants to be their own independent nation again. And the native people here are like that too. Each need to be independent nation again. I think it's just down now starting. So this is what I would like to bring to you tonight.
The issues is bringing out the recognition of native sovereignty. In the case, for example, of the Hopi Tribal Council, which is opposed and acting in opposition to the factions, the Hopi elders that Thomas represents. It's this tribal council which has, through the government, foisted the problem on Big Mountain of trying to get the people off of their ancestral homelands to mine more coal and uranium out of there. So what we're looking at is for people to recognize the native natural sovereignty, traditional religious leaders, and then insist that the BIA faction through the Hopi Tribal Council backs off his attempt to mine more coal for pollution and more uranium for more dangerous things and leave the Big Mountain people alone.
And they haven't opened a door to the native people in the United Nations today. They let other world leaders, so-called enemy people, come in and speak there. But it's standing right here in our homeland, yet it has never been open to people to talk, to bring their problem to them. So the Hopi knew this was going to be hard, so they told us to knock on that door 3 times. It would be a sacred number, because 3 world wars there, people destroyed, and this is the 4th one, final one. So we're going to have to knock on that door 3 times. If the United Nations people don't open the door, then we knock 1 more time, last one, and that would be perhaps. I just talked to the leaders the day before I came. Again, they mentioned it. We felt that the world problem is so great that we might make 1 more attempt at this time. Maybe the United Nations will open the door. Those spiritual leaders, political figures, people around the world, they don't know what to do with the world problem. They call it global survival. In Oxford University, where hundreds came, Dalai Lama and others were there, and the parliamentarians from different nations, big political figures were there, 100 of them. But they were stuck with this problem. What are we going to do? They were asking each other, what do you have? What other religions you have? What advice do you have? We want to hear everything, because this world is in trouble.
Thomas Banyaka participated in the first Global Forum in Oxford, England, along with Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama.
Who live and die in poverty and hunger.
After a long, all over the earth, our technology now permits us to become reacquainted with each other.
Sometimes I call our planet as our mother. So now it seems our mother planet telling us, my children, please take some care about me.
First condition, stop any war.
No army on earth is as powerful as ideas whose time has come.
Where there is discord, I may bring up.
As a send-off for Banyaka on his way to the second Global Forum in Moscow, USSR, a panel on the power of nonviolence, including local speakers, was convened in conjunction with the University of California at Santa Barbara on the January 9th, 5th anniversary of the death of the Most Venerable Nichidatsu Fujii.
Immediately here as a veteran of the Great Peace March and the Leningrad to Moscow Peace March, and she's going to be starting the global walk in the beginning of February around the world. Has carried the Hiroshima Peace Flame on those two previous walks and coming up around the world. And next to her is Kaz, who's a Hiroshima A-bomb survivor, Hibakusha, and who's also been recently an advisor to a motion picture that's being made right now for authenticity about the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And next to her is Jean Hoffman, who's many things, an author, a teacher of creative writing, a Quaker pacifist I've seen on things. She's with the Fellowship of Reconciliation and was instrumental in the development of the U.S. Reconciliation Program, and one of the main personalities behind the development of the sister city relationship between Yalta and Santa Barbara, and one of the founders of the Peace Resource Center locally. And next to her, Mark McGinnis, an environmental attorney, currently with the Environmental Studies Department at UCSB. Mark is also one of the main founders of the Environmental Defense Center in town and a longtime supporter of many spiritual causes, and particularly the Native people and their struggles locally. Next is a traditional Hopi interpreter, Thomas Banyaka, who has traveled many places around the world since 1948, having been commissioned by the elders of the Hopi people to bring out their teachings of the prophecies and their message for peace. And next to him is Pilula, the Chumash elder, a clan mother of the Bear Clan medicine here in the Santa Barbara area, who's hosting us here in Chumash land. And next to her is Mohawk Chief Jake Swamp, from representing the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. Their teachings on the Peacemaker, the Great Law of Peace, and the Tree of Peace. And he's come from New York for this occasion. And next to him is Santa Barbara scientist Bruce DePalma, whose research and development of new discoveries and physical phenomena of rotating objects that's led to the development of a new energy technology to replace nuclear and fossil fuel power, which is currently under development by the government of India and many other places. So my name is David Williams, and I think of myself as an American peace movement organizer, and
thank you.
Thank you.
After delivery of the opening prayer and message, the panel began with Judy Imai on behalf of the Global Walk for a Livable World.
I'm known as a Sanseihan, which in Japanese means 3.5 generations. It means my family has been American for 3.5 generations. I'm a survivor from Manzanar. Manzanar is a United States concentration camp. And in 1942, our family was imprisoned in Manzanar. We were plucked up from our house in the San Fernando Valley and placed in the desert in Lone Pine, California. My grandfather, my aunts and uncles, all of us, except for one uncle. And this uncle was in the United States Army. He was fighting for the United States Army in Italy. He was a medic. And at some point in my life, when I realized and started putting all this together about my being in camp, I was 3 years old, about my uncle fighting for the United States Army, something just clicked in my head that it wasn't right. It's like threads of war have shaped my life, because ever since that camp experience, I have looked at the world through those eyes of a little girl being imprisoned and seeing her people confused and angry. Then in 1987, I went on an international peace walk from Leningrad to Moscow and took this flame from LA to DC, DC to Leningrad, and then we walked and bused. There were 200 Americans and 200 Soviets that walked together. And it was an amazing experience because the Soviets are very dedicated to peace. They have peace organizations in every city. They have peace flames in every city, and towns also.
My English, even though I am born in California, Pasadena, but when I was not quite 1 year old, my parents took me back to their hometown, Hiroshima. It was most difficult for me to talk about my past life. All that time, I said I wish I could forget. I tried, but it was most difficult for me to forget about horrible experience. When I was 18, every day, American airplane B-29 used to come to city of the Hiroshima. This B-29 was the most beautiful airplane. I used to give the name Angel. They never dropped the bomb. They never hurt us. To me, it was Angel. Only difference is 45 years ago, August 6th. It was a beautiful airplane and a beautiful day, the blue sky. I did see the Angel. Then Angel disappeared. He left small in the blue sky. That's the only difference. I talked to my neighborhood girl. I wonder what is that? And the girl said, where? They're there. Then, very powerful flash. I was unconscious for a while. Moment ago, beautiful sky, and I did see the angel. to me was a heaven and turned to be hell. Just only 1 second. I was nearly died because of the radiation sick.
My basic feeling about science, and you know that science is connected to everything that's been talked about tonight. Science is what's behind the power plant. Science is what's generating the electricity. Science is what's creating the pollution. Science is what's creating the germs. My feeling was if I were a parent, I would not like to send my children to a school where they sat in the same classroom with a mass murderer. Now, for instance, on this campus, there are scientists who work for the U.S. government. And they have signed secrecy agreements, and these secrecy agreements have to do with giving up their constitutional rights, and they're subject to imprisonment, fines, and deadly force, as it's called. That's called a gun, if they tell you what they're doing. Now, this means two things. Firstly, when you sit in the class with your physics professor, you're sitting in a class with a man who is not telling you the truth. He's working on certain kinds of things which he can't talk about, which have to do with certain kinds of physics, which are so far ahead of the 7th century old-fashioned clockwork physics they teach here that there's just no comparison. So you're being misled. And furthermore, the moral compromise of a scientist who works to destroy this planet is a sinful thing. Science comes from nature. Nature is the planet. No one can produce a work of science and destroy the planet and be considered a scientist anymore and belong to what I call the college. So you as students, I think you should question your professors and ask them what they're doing. Get them to tell you the truth.
You to say that we have to realize there are people out there that need our attention. Those of us that are able to walk around and enjoy life. We have to come to aid of some people that are very much hurting in these times. I know that we can do it. I know that we can overcome all the negativeness of the world today. I know that it can be done because we have people like Bruce.
I also lived. Was the American Friends Service Committee, and I began to work for the American Service Committee, and I ultimately became a Quaker. It is through my spiritual life that I realize there aren't any enemies, that no one should be my enemy. This is a very hard lesson to learn because many people are doing things in the world that are very damaging to other people. And it's very hard to live without an enemy, but I try. I don't do well, but I try. I learned also that if I really believed in peace, I had to take some risks. And I had to, as Bruce said, ask some questions, asking questions everywhere. And recently I learned a new way of asking questions. And I think there's a fresh wind blowing in the peace movement.
I work in the field of law, and I'm trying to see that we can create law, healing art. Because we are not living within the laws, we are finding it necessary to create and to maintain a legal system that is not healing. It is diseased itself. And by using it and handling it and touching it, we are spreading disease. I advocate close all the law schools for a year or two when I speak to law groups. And really rethink, we should rethink what we are about. And take the law out of the hands of the legal priesthood, which Alex de Tocqueville, the French philosopher, upon observing American life over a century ago, saw the trend at that time, which has become fully bloomed in our time, that in America, he said, law and lawyering and whatnot has become the new religion.
That the history of the Native people is still not told in this land. The brutality and the violence that came down on our people, peaceful people. I was happy to hear Mr. DePalma talk about this way of bringing energy. It's a marvelous idea, and he showed us the machine, so it's even more than an idea. And I think that it's going to be a coming together of some very courageous scientists who will bring together those scientific and natural laws, and that a way of bringing peace onto this planet.
So, as a result of this arms race, we end up with 100,000 welfare mothers who are homeless. We end up with 10,000 children who die in this country a year because of poverty. So this is economic violence. It's really quite a price to pay for the arms race.
Also participating in the panel was Laura Lynch of the Women's Action for Nuclear Disarmament and the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation.
And I think what I'd like to see all of us do when we leave here tonight is to decide tomorrow morning when you get up, what can I do today to change in my life, in my own personal life? What can I do to make this a better world?
Completing the panel is Dr. Hyman Johnson, a teacher-trainer for the Education in Human Values program of Sri Satya Sai Baba.
And so the message there was that what are we truly? What are we human beings truly? And where do the differences really lie? Well, when you consider that, you see nothing. You see that when it's the truth, for example, that truth would remain so under all conditions, under all mediums of vision or expression or whatever the case might be. So he rushed to conclusion to really say that what we are essentially is spirit. What we are essentially is consciousness. We all have bodies, we all have minds, but essentially we're spirit. And under that truth, essentially we are all one. Now I sort of started out with that because I'm also reminded of a little quote by Albert Einstein, who said that the world we have made as a result of the level of thinking we thus far creates problems that we cannot solve at the same level as the level we created them at. That means we have to raise our level of thinking, our level of consciousness. And I told that little story just to say, as you've indicated, that tomorrow morning, or even before now, many of us have already come to the conclusion that our dedication must be complete and full in this work. I have a quote here by Satya Sai Baba that I like so much. And there's so much more of this that's in the book that I took this from. But it's just something that's so wonderful, and it does speak directly about love. The most subtle aspect of my teaching is love. The circle around that subtle point, in order to realize it, is the spiritual practices, such as meditation, repetition of the name of the Lord, whichever name you prefer, talking to good people, directing the mind away from harmful thoughts, and so on. In themselves, these spiritual practices are of no value. The only thing of real value is love itself.
I think I'll stand up for this one, just to stretch. Tomorrow, we would like to rededicate this tree that we planted 5 years ago. In the last 5 years, we've seen many changes take place, most of it positive side. The effort of trying to bring peace in a world comes from many dedicated people doing their own thing through their own understandings, just by sharing. And so the strength comes from sharing, not being afraid to share with one another. And that it's true that we must continue to walk as much as we can a spiritual life. And before we leave tonight, I'd like to share with you some of the knowledge is tied to the Tree of Peace. And I'll be explaining that more in detail tomorrow. But the part where immediately after the Tree of Peace was planted, and its symbolism was provided to the people that were present at that time, perhaps 1,000 years ago, after the war had been taking place for centuries. They were instructed as leaders to hold hands with one another in unity in a circle around this tree. But also at that time it was prophesied that one day in the future this tree would be someone would come and hack at its roots and the tree would start to fall. And the leaders were instructed to remain strong and to hold on to one another. And if at that time when the tree would fall, it would land on their arms. And under no circumstances would they allow that Tree of Peace to fall to the ground. Ne iti hasulunya dahadigo sadonge ne ladiksasu. Taoga di wahe ganyo ni dok tage. Ne hadoi fa nega. Ne luna da ne jabe. Ne adasugayo atstasa. Ne agagweni skana hunu tonyo we dahadigo sadonge ladiksasu.
I pledge allegiance to the earth.
I pledge allegiance to the earth.
And to the flora, fauna, and human life that it supports.
And to the flora, fauna, and human life that it supports.
One planet, indivisible.
One planet, indivisible.
With air, water, and soil.
With safe air, water, and soil.
Economic justice.
Economic justice.
Equal rights and peace for all.
Equal rights and peace for all.
And know that we are talking about peace, friendship, love, brotherhood. The next thing that we need to find out how we're going to bring that concept into being, not only for ourselves, but the whole world. When I attended Oxford University last April, somehow they got me over there with my Hopi passport and was able to listen to Congress, spiritual leaders and parliamentarians came together and they have on the stage a great big picture of globe. And they call it global survival. It really struck me when I listened to them talk. They're talking exactly what Hopi back in 1948, that when the world problem becomes so great, many political figures, spiritual people, and grassroots people, I'm going to be stuck with that problem. What are we going to do? How are we going to survive? That's exactly what they're saying. They said the world is in trouble. We're all living on that planet Earth together. We should forget we are Americans or English people or Russian people or German people. We should recognize that we're all one human being living on this one world. We should forget I belong to this church or that church, and if you don't belong to that church, you're condemned, you can't be saved. We should put that aside. We are human beings. We should recognize each other as human beings. That's what Hopi say. We are children of this Mother Earth, that we are one people. Yukima is a great influence on my life, that I must stand true to my principles. Peaceful life, religious life of the Hopi, and to uphold the thing that he did. And he lived in Hotwala, but he spent a lot of time in prison, mistreated by army, and he just almost died in the prison one time. And it's one of the men that was sent to Alcatraz for 4 years in 1906. And he never gave up. He went to Washington, D.C. 2 times, talked to some of the high leaders over there, but they can't change his mind. They can't defeat him. He wants to be a Hopi. He wants to speak his language. He wants to continue to uphold the law of great spirit, law of nature for all people around the world, so that this will not be destroyed. When Alcatraz came home, that's the biggest earthquake took place in San Francisco in 1906. And I felt very strongly, Dalai Lama from around the other side of the world came to San Francisco. In a way that we expected he would bring a spiritual message. A lot of thousands of people came to us because they think that he's going to bring peace. But he was telling the message to the world that every one of you have that power. Every one of you have that spiritual instructions. Everyone has something responsibility to change things so that peace will really come. And he was bringing that spiritual message. In 4 days after he left, the earthquake took place.
Panel, Bangyakya left on his way to Moscow to participate in the second global forum, and 10 days later, a satellite broadcast showed that the Soviets had indeed accepted his Hopi passport.
To the Sovin Center here in Moscow, a common need to work together toward a common goal.
As scientists, many of us have had profound experiences of awe and reverence before the universe. We understand that what is regarded as sacred is more likely to be treated with care and respect. Our planetary home should be so regarded.
They came from all across the globe, from more than 80 countries, different backgrounds, cultures, beliefs, and ideas. They were all faced with a challenge of finding ways to further the fight for our common survival.
I've been asked to echo the words of one of our visionary grandfathers in North America. And we had many visionary leaders. We had leaders who could see in the future and what was coming.
We have invited so-called 5 major religions, at the same time indigenous and other groups who have been working, particularly they are tackling with our environment issue. So they are very important. The people, they have their own religious dogma. And we have to pay attention to these people.
Chief from the Northwest nations was one of these visionaries. And in 1855, he wrote a letter to the President of the United States, and he said, when the great chief in Washington sent words that he wants to buy our land, he asks a great deal from us. We do not own the sweet air or the sparkle of the water. How then can you buy them from us? We are part of the earth, and the earth is us. The fragrant flowers are our sisters, the reindeer, the horse, the great eagle, our brothers. What are human beings without animals? If all the animals ceased to exist, human beings would die of a great loneliness of spirit. For whatever happens to the animals will soon happen to the human beings. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but a thread of it. Whatever befalls the earth befalls also the children of the earth. Chief Seattle.
Through the harmony of chant and the melodies of song that the indigenous peoples of the planet have honored mankind's connection to the Earth Mother. The Global Forum of Spiritual and Parliamentary Leaders seeks to learn from this connection. 20 indigenous peoples were invited from the 4 directions of this planet to guide us to a future that honors the earth and gives thanks for its gifts. Recording artist Robbie is an Apache American Indian. His rock video called Is It Too Late makes its world debut on this program. It is performed by Romero and artists from 7 major nuclear weapons.
Can you hear your mama crying? Feel the warning, taste what she's saying. People, the hour's near. Well, do you know the game you're playing? Will this be our fate? Is it too late? Politician hungry for power, big business blinded with greed, people obsessed with possessions, well, they never feel their need. Is this your fate? Donde está? Strip Mother Earth to feed fat Mary's little boy. Tell me what she's worth to treat her life like some little toy grown to hate. Struggling for freedom, clouds of faith began to lift. What do you see? Are you listening? As the winds of life Well, this could be our fate. Не делай это твоей судьбой. Is it too late? Is it too late? Oh, it's too much. Is it too late?
Robbie Romero, an Apache American Indian, one of the 20-some-odd indigenous people invited to the Global Forum this week. His rock video, Is It Too Late, was performed by recording artists from 7 major nuclear nations: Great Britain, China, France, Israel, Africa, United States, and of course the USSR.
January 10th, at UCSB's Chancellor's Conference Room, a planning meeting was opened with prayers.
Oh, Grandfather, spirits of this land, thank you for letting us gather here today and discuss the things that we've come here to discuss about how to bring peace onto this planet that needs it so badly. I thank you for this day, and I pray for a blessing on all the people that are here. I pray that everything will be good today, that everything be good. Oh, all my relations.
Would you like to offer prayer as well? So we have on the center of the table the Hiroshima Peace Flame that's going to be installed today on the Peace Monument on campus. Jake Swamp explains some of the life story of the Iroquois peacemaker who brought the teaching of the Great Law of Peace and the Tree of Peace.
Where I was at was, maybe I'll briefly go back so they can understand. The story of the peacemaker begins about 1,000 years ago in response to our people's ability to destroy themselves at that time. And that he was responsible for bringing peace and unifying 5 warring nations. But I'm telling a story of how he was born. It was like a virgin birth on the northern shores of Lake Ontario. And I explained as the grandmother was disappointed because her daughter had this condition. She was very disappointed, and she was afraid that she would be ridiculed for what had happened. And so she decided to destroy him, and she tried 3 times, but she failed. And so the young man grows up into a young man, and he announces to them that he has a great purpose, that he has to bring peace to a certain people that are warring against one another. And so he builds a stone canoe, and the people ridicule building this canoe. And the appointed time comes when he's a very young man, and he pushes it out into the water. He bids them farewell, and that's where I was at, you know, when, as the people are watching, he disappears into the distance in the water, and the canoe floats and it moves with.
Entering the meeting during Jake Swamp's message was actor Jon Voigt. appearing on behalf of Thomas Banyaka.
That building right there, that wooden building, if you were to face it.
Coming home.
That was
so good. Yeah.
That'd be great to see you. I know, of course, Oren, and I met many of the many chiefs in one of the last councils. They had a meeting of many of the native people, the elders conference with the runners. And I spent some time with some of your friends, all great people, I might add. They came to my house and we had some fun. It was great. Chief Shenandoah and a couple of the, I can't remember the name of the older fellow. What's the name of the very old guy? Louis Farmer? Louis Farmer. Great. And to know him?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Oh, he's the best.
But if it's a real strict kind of Buddhism, nobody will want to tell you that. Went to a Shiva yesterday that is just
These are so old ones that are on here.
Before circling the UCSB, Chief Jake Swamp discusses wampum with Jon Voigt.
Person is starting to make them again. And this is made of hemp, wild hemp. And that's what they used to use to manufacture the belts and have them put together. And so that's what a wampum looks like. This is a purple wampum. It usually signifies grief.
Grief?
Yeah. And the white wampum is means purity.
All around.
Come again. We planted this tree 5 years ago in an effort to ask for peace in the world. And as you know, many different things has happened since that time, which gives us hope. Now each culture has been given many symbols to share with one another in the human family. And today I would like to talk about that certain culture that has given strength to our people in the Iroquois Confederacy. And so today I would like to share with you how that confederacy came together, how they emerged from a period of warfare and destruction 1,000 years ago. There was a great peacemaker that was born amongst the Huron people. One day, the grandmother decided that she must destroy this child because he represented shame that would be brought upon her family. When he grew to a young man, one day he announced that he had a great purpose in life, that he was instructed to travel from that area into the direction of the rising sun in the east. He was informed at that time that there is a people in those areas continually destroying one another through warfare. We must bring the peace and goodwill of people. As he reached the other shore, he saw men running about. They were hunting. They were hunters. And when he spoke to them, he shared with them the ideas of the tree of peace and the peace that he wanted for that area. And she is the first one that ever accepted this peace. And he said that she would be known forever as the mother of nations. From that symbol of that woman came the future clan mothers that would choose their leaders in the future. And up to the present time, the women still choose our leaders in the Iroquois Confederacy. When he arrived to the worst people on the face of the earth of that time, the Ganyoga people, which are known as the Mohawks today, he approached the worst ones of all. And when he arrived at their villages, their leaders, who ruled by their strength, invited him into a circle, and they counseled with him. They asked him what he was doing in that area. And so he told them the plan of peace. If you will follow the directions that I lay before you, there will be many happy days in the future for your people. You will counsel for the welfare of the future. Whenever you are in a meeting to discuss any item, your first thought will be projected 7 generations into the future. The decision you make today will not harm your grandchildren. And so it happened in those times. And this is how the Ganyogahaga people were brought together. And so today we are known as the foundation of the Great Law of Peace. We are like the trees. We are like the grass. And so at that time, the peacemaker and Ayuwata met and they worked together. He employed them as a spokesman. He said, the union that we have formed will contain 5 fires. And when these 5 fires come together, it will become one. For us to come in the future, it will be your duty to watch over this council fire of all of the 5 nations. Then and only then did he accept the Great Law of Peace. And to the present day, Tadodaho, the title name, is carried by Lian Shenado of the Onondaga people. And now they stood there, the leaders that they had found those times, numbered 50. And he instructed them to stand in a circle and hold hands with one another. And they chose this tree of peace, a great white pine that stood there tall and strong. And it seemed like it pierced the sky, it was so tall. The peacemaker said, now we will uproot this great tree. And now a great cavity in the earth is formed. Now all you men who used to fight one another in warfare will cast your weapons of war, and it will be taken by the swift waters underneath the ground into the unknown regions. Nevermore will your grandchildren of the 5 nations see warfare between yourselves. You will live in peace under the branches of the great tree of peace. There will be 4 white roots that will go into the 4 directions, and their nature is peace. Any man or any nation should ever recognize its purpose. They would only need to trace it to its source, and they would be welcomed to sit in the shelter of its branches. We now place an eagle at the top of this tree. It will signify that the eagle sees the farthest as he flies the highest. That each person is it to see afar into the future, so that if they see any danger approaching, they would immediately warn the rest. And so today, the alarm has been sounded. And as 5 years ago we planted this tree, and the people that stood here, as they promised that they would work towards peace. And now looking back 5 years, we have noticed that many walls are coming down, and it's coming from the people. The power of the people. There is strength. And so he said, one day in the future, this tree will start to fall. Because the people will come here and they will hack at its roots and it will start to die. It will start to fall. It will take a long time. You leaders, we have to be ever strong. You will be burdened by its heaviness as it lands on your arms. Keep your hands tightly close with one another. Even if the tree falls, it will never be permitted to touch the ground. And when that happens, the grandchildren will be born, and they will help you to raise that tree again. And if we are the grandchildren of those times, remember those tins, and let's get strength with one another and go into the future holding hands with one another and make this world a peaceful place to live for all our grandchildren in the future. Even though we might not see it come to pass, we are starting something for our little ones. They need to have, we have to do this. Tonga di ne kanun yu dok taki. Ne enyo gwe tage kanun au tue nuni. Ona ne kanun yu gwila de. Ona ne wish nyo sage ne jina het kagwira yotu. Horga di ne sa gwagila da kwe ne ga satsta sa. Ne jini ho diata wa ne gwa sat sa do kwe diata de nyo kwe. Da nega di wai nega nyo nyo do tage nega nyo nyo dia ne ta ne ne skana ne lunu tenyo ne wa he ne wa kaya da ne ga ne go da nega di wai ne wa ga gwe ni ne skana onu tenyo wa ga ho ja gero ne on ja gwe go ho nega di ne wa di wa to de na ho ga dak sa sa ne ga ne je ho ja ge.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and now we're going to walk from here over to the Hiroshima, to the Eternal Flame Memorial Peace Monument on campus, and at that point we'll be installing the Hiroshima Peace Flame after a few prayers. So this time so be careful. If you're on the other side, we'll go together, I guess, down that way. So, Yoshida showing?
Agi wat nego. Ne wahe agwego wat kowana kwe. Enon yo gelado. Ohandonaga onislage. Now that we have gathered in this area, in the future it's going to be very important to many people that are coming behind us. We, the ones that are present, will remember this day. And we ask all the forces of the universe to be with us today as we dedicate and light a flame to the cause of peace. We ask that all the spirits of the world and the universe to be with us as at this time.
Means love. Sad memory. And also, especially young generation. So many young generation. Great. I feel very happy. Respect you. Many years ago, it seems to be more hopeless. Each year, many people they join and try to keep the world peace, especially the young generation. Very simple word. I know exactly how I'm through, so please that's what I say. I like to say a lot of things, a little emotional. Very simple message. Natalia, would you please come help and show and support? Would you please repeat it after this word? Get other people to let's say peace. Would you please have that? Let's say peace. We will not repeat. The same mistake again.
The same mistake again.
No more Hiroshima.
No more Hiroshima.
No more Nagasaki. No more Hibakusha.
No more Hibakusha.
No more war.
No more war.
Peace.
Peace.
Remember, especially young generation, no more war. And I know that we could keep the world peace, but we need to help each other. Thank you very much. On behalf of Asian and Pacific Americans for Nuclear Awareness and the Global Walk for a Livable World, I want to thank you all for being here today. In a sense, we're all keepers of the flame.
Very moved to be here today because I have an opportunity to think so many beautiful thoughts. Reverend Yamato asked me to speak, so perhaps he wishes me to speak about a very dear friend of ours and one of the reasons why I am here today, and that is that person is my good friend Thomas Banyaka, who is not present today. As I have listened to the speakers, and I must say I'm so impressed to be among people who speak so quietly, so many beautiful words of truth. And I have to say that whenever I'm in the company of people who move me deeply and encourage the best in me, they seem to always speak simple words, felt, and maybe you have to lean a little bit in to hear them, but their words reach deep into your heart. Thomas Banyako is a fellow like this. Thomas is a Hopi Indian, and Hopi means peace. And as you can see here today, when each one who takes this lovely microphone is from a different part of the world, a different culture, a different heritage, each quite unique, each seeming to speak as if they were brothers and sisters because they seem to speak from the same center. And it's been my experience as I've grown older to understand that the truth is available to all cultures, all heritages throughout the world. And it's been my pleasure to pray with people from every different heritage, and it's most magnificent. Can you imagine a world where everyone looked exactly alike? How unpleasant it would be, really, now the magnificent uniqueness of each individual, all being like flowers as we look across our faces. It's the most amazing thing to see where we all came from, these bodies that we inhabit for this time. And when I was, several years ago, I was at a gathering not unlike this, very humble, very sweet gathering of people who had come to speak for the big mountain issue and to speak for justice for those beautiful, the Navajo and the Hopi. And I met Thomas Banyaka. And I also met another fellow by the name of Grandfather Victor, who is a Chumash Indian, and we are on Chumash land. I'm going to tell this other little story, too. His name is Grandfather Victor, the fellow that stood up, and he said, he just gave us a little information about his life, that he was a forest ranger at a young age, and he had been told by his elders that if he went out into the forest, and in the middle hour, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, if he listened to the earth, he would hear the sound of Mother Earth's heart beating. And so he went out at night and he cleared himself a place in the ground to sleep, and he made a thought to wake up in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And he did. It was dark and the sounds of the night, and he leaned in. He was full of anticipation. And he leaned in, his ear to the ground, to hear Mother Earth's heart beating. And I can still see his face as he said it, and he listened, and he said, "And I did hear Mother Earth's heart beating. And of course, it was my heart." Whew.
I think that it's a simple thought, really. It's something we all understand. That the world beats with our own heart. And if any one of us can capture that thought and contribute to their heartbeat from this moment in time, the will of that higher generosity, that great spirit, will inhabit this earth. And I saw so many things in that little moment of truth. Simple, just a simple expression of truth from this fellow. And we always like that. Their truths aren't very complicated. They're not something that we have to go home and memorize and do tricks with. They're quite plain. And he further went on and he said, now I would like to introduce you to a man who I heard about for a long time. When I was in New York at the Statue of Liberty, we had a ceremony and prayer for peace and freedom for all men. And I did my little prayer, and someone tugged at my sleeve. And this person said to me, pardon me, grandfather, but do you know Thomas Banyaka? And I said, no, I don't know Thomas Banyaka, but I have heard of him. And not too long after that, maybe 2 years, I was in South America. And again, we were at a ceremony where religious people from that part of the world had come together and spoke to each other and gave prayers. Again, someone pulled at my shirt and said, grandfather, could you tell me, do you know Thomas Banyaka? And I said, no, but I have heard about Thomas Banyaka. And he said, now it is my pleasure, my great honor, to introduce to you here today at the Holiday Inn, Thomas Banyaka. And he stays at my house. He said that. And then Thomas got up. And these two old fellas, they were both over 80. And Thomas gets up and says, well, I have had a very big pat on the back. It will hurt for a while, but I'll get over it, he said. So here these great ones are just exchanging greetings and love for each other, you see. And Thomas Banyaka, let me tell you a little bit about this because it relates to peace and it relates to what we're all about now. Each of the great cultures have had prophecies and prophets. We've spoken, Chief Jake Swamp has introduced some of you today to the great peacemaker who had composed the peace plan for the Confederacy of the Iroquois. It is a most remarkable event. You guys are at school here. Let me put you onto something. There is a congressional record. I'm going to give you a whole idea now today. There's a congressional, it is S-Con, which may mean Second Congress, Section 76. That's what it is. So if you can remember those words, one of you here remember that. Section 76. SecCon 76. And it is about the Iroquois and their confederacy and the great peace plan from the peacemaker. It's exactly what Jake has been talking about today. And it is all in that congressional record. A tremendous volume. It's a volume, I have it right over here, as a matter of fact. And it charts the history of the peacemaker briefly and tells you of the great peace plan and shows you how Benjamin Franklin, so many years ago, paid close attention to the Iroquois nation and the Iroquois Confederacy in building his ideas of what this government would be for this country. And if you look to our democracy, you say that it was based almost entirely on the inspiration of Benjamin Franklin from the Iroquois nation. Quite a remarkable piece of information I'm giving you, and yet it's the absolute truth. So get that piece of information. One of the things that is not alluded to, I'm just going to give you some of this stuff that I know, so I'll give you an impetus. That one of the things that was not translated from that from that confederacy to our Constitution was the body, the body of people who selected the chiefs and were most instrumental, perhaps the center of the Iroquois government, and that was a Congress of women, because they're the best people to consult when looking for the value of manhood. And that was not translated over. Perhaps someday we will see that. I think that would be a wise move on all our parts. However, we'll see what the future brings. But take a look at that document. It's quite remarkable. And insist that the people, the teachers, know about it and refer to it. It would be quite an extraordinary thing. Maybe one person among you will take it as his specific labor to get that piece of information, read it thoroughly, and dispense it in this community, and recommend that all colleges and all high schools get that information. It's such basic information. And it teaches us, among other things, that these people, who were indigenous people, the native people of this continent, were extraordinary people, powerfully spiritual people, who have perhaps been our teachers for all this long time, certainly in the area of ecology and the drama we face today. We couldn't have any better people to look to. And I have to say, thank God for the few remnants of these holy ones who exist today, who we are able to go to perhaps get some nurturing and hope at this time. And now I'm going to tell you the story of Thomas Banyaka, and then I will close. I won't take too much of your time, but I'll just tell you a little bit about this remarkable fellow. Thomas Banyaka, in 1948, was called from his people to gather because of a momentous event, which was that the prophecy that they had been carrying for perhaps thousands of years had come to a certain point. They had been told in their prophecies that there would be a time when there would be two major world events, two disastrous world events. The second, more destructive than the first, and the second, having been attended by the symbols that had been on their rattles for thousands of years. The symbol on the Hopi rattle, the symbols on the Hopi rattle are the sun, symbol of life, the symbol of the life force, and the symbol of the seed going to the four directions, another life signal, and that is the swastika. Shortly after these two destructive world events, there was to be a time when a gourd of ashes would be dropped from the sky, creating a fire so hot that fish in the sea would die, and diseases would be created that man's medicines couldn't cure. At the moment of the bombing of Hiroshima and the bombing of Nagasaki, the Hopi people gathered. Holy people who had kept certain information all their lives given to them by their grandfathers and grandmothers were told that when those events happened, they must convene. So they came from the mesas, the different mesas, and they convened. At that time, they were to send 4 messengers into the world from a certain clan. The clan was the Coyote clan, which was the clan. Coyote is the animal that will give warning. And Jay can attest to this. Jake is standing here. I'm getting this obviously 15th hand in some way, but first hand some of it because I know Thomas Banyaka. But he was of the Coyote clan, and perhaps they had to make exception of the other clans at that time because not too much of their heritage remained. But they chose 4 people, and he was among them. And they were to go into the world. They were to go out into the world, and the holy ones stay on the Hopi land. They're not allowed to leave, the very holy ones. But these messengers were to be sent out into the world and to warn people, like the Coyotes. And they were to warn them not to improve these weapons, that there would be severe consequences if they did. Now, there are many other elements to the prophecy, all of which you would probably like to know. You probably like to know everything that I know and I can relate to today. But I feel that it would be improper to use this time in that manner to express every little thing that I know. And still, the little I know would take me quite a long time. But he went into the world. And one thing that we're told, they said to these messengers, if you go, you must go to the east. And there would be a house of Mica. This came down all these years. Told about a time when people would talk on cobwebs. There would be pathways in the sky where people would travel. Many things of this nature. And they told about this house of Mica. Now, Thomas is telling me all this story. He's a very old fellow. And he said, we didn't know what the House of Mica was. Now, Mica is a rock, kind of a glass aspect to it. And so they decided that they would journey to the east and try to find the House of Mica. And when Thomas tells this story, he tells of all these Hopi people in vans. And he tells us these old Indians in vans. He said, we didn't know how to read maps. We were all over the place. We'd meet in gas stations, then take off, then lose each other, try to come back. And this terrible time, looking around for each other, you see. And he creates a very amusing portrait of it all, you see. But these meek people were the people who held this powerful truth that came down thousands of years. And they were doing what they were told to do, go find the House of Mica. So they set off loyally to follow through. And this is in our time now. We're talking about our time. 1950, my time. Anyway, so he sets off with his friends, and after a couple of weeks around the country going in and out of different places, and you can imagine what kind of ridicule these fellows have incurred in their lives. Difficult lives they've lived, these great ones. Even among their own communities, because their communities have been eaten into, there's been lots of poison put into their own people. But they carry on. So they came to the house. They came to New York City. They wound up in New York City. And they try to find out how to get to the east. Where's the east? The east shore of New York City. So they walk to the east of New York City. And they said they're looking for they're all these little people looking for the House of Mica. And all of a sudden, one points. And they look up. And at this time, you have to remember that there were not many buildings of glass in New York City. This was quite a remarkable thing to see in the world. And there they saw the United Nations. And they knew that that's where they were supposed. House of Mica, the house of all nations, it was said. And you must knock on that door 3 times. Just as Jake said earlier, 3 is the number. And if no one answers the knock after 3 times, then you know you've done your part. And what will be, will be. You must let it be now. Thomas has been all over the world with his message, and today, Thomas Banyaka is in the Soviet Union. This most remarkable events of these past years, and now there is a peace meeting. Invited people from all over the world, one of them being Thomas Banyaka, and members of the Iroquois. And they're right at this moment in that very place. And when I thought of it today, I thought of Fuji Guruji, the great holy one, who these beautiful people are disciples of, who was a good friend of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was influenced by the writings of Tolstoy, as was Martin Luther King. And now they're back there in Russia, the home of Tolstoy, speaking the truths of Tolstoy to the Russian people. Quite amazing circle of events. So I send Thomas my love today, as I'm sure all of you do, and I wish he could be here because he is such a splendid character, really, the most amazing fellow. But he sends me in his stead, perhaps, because of his dear friend. And I have to say just one more thing in closing. I have to say this, that these stories that we have heard from Chief Jake Swamp, and the story I just told you of Thomas Banyaka, and the many stories that we have heard throughout the world of a spiritual nature are powerful stories. They are deeply moving stories. They are meant to be indelible, and they have that effect. Once you hear them, you cannot forget them. When you hear the story of the maker that came to the Iroquois, you cannot forget it. They are indelible, as the stories of our own Bible. Magnificent stories. And they're all telling the same thing. And when we hear the stories of these great people, these great portraits of what humans can be, we say, well, I'm just a little fellow. How can it be anything that I can really aspire to, or how can I be of any help in any way? The course of events in this world is so huge. There's so much to overcome. Even within myself, I find I have loathsome attributes. I'm very greedy. I'm jealous. I'm frightened. All these things, you know, that we are as humans. But I have to say, and this is from my own experience too, because I grew up in Yonkers and I didn't hear a lot about a lot of things, and then I went on a march against the bomb at some point in my life, and then someone asked me to speak, and I got my little shaky legs up and I spoke anyway. Doing that right now, do you know? I have to say that every one of us is an ignition for that energy. Every single one of us. Our real parents, you know, our real parents are these great ones that give us our little loving messages from the great parent. That doesn't mean that our parents and that our parenting isn't tremendously important, most important thing. But that we have to be parents in the light of the great parent of us all, of the great creator of us all. And that when we can be that child, and that's why I always see people who are so spiritual. I see them, the really spiritual ones. They're not arrogant. They're so sweet. They're like children. And why shouldn't they be like children? Because really, we are all babes. And once we live that truth, we can become powerful. Like a medicine man from Nigeria said to a crowd of people who came to find out about this Nigerian medicine man. They said, I want to know. So he asked for questions, and one person said, I would like to know about power. Can you tell me about power? He said, yes, I can tell you about power. He said, you can be more powerful than I if you love me more than I love you. Oh. They all are saying the same thing. They walk sweetly. They speak in little voices, like the voice in Elijah's ear, the still small voice. And those that are listening can hear, and then they can join that beautiful crowd of people who are doing their best. And I think we're all on that journey anyway. It's just a matter of time when we catch hold of it all. And how much, you know, when we catch hold of it, we do as much as we can. We offer our little blessing. So today, I'm favored to be here. I'm fortunate enough to be here with these wonderful people, with all you new wonderful people, to be able to express this truth that I know, which is that we are the painters of our own portrait. And as we grow, we learn. Mostly we learn from our mistakes, don't we? But you know, that's a very indelible way of learning. Once we make a mistake, we know which road again. But we can take that road little by little, learning and growing and contributing along the way. And our contributions are, as Mother Teresa said, she said, somebody said to her, she said, well, you know, you're not making really, it's not a drop in the bucket compared to what, you know, the suffering in the world and the poverty and homelessness, and you're not doing anything, Mother, really. You should be involved with a corporation. You could do it this way, do it that way. He said, perhaps it's not a drop in the bucket, but if it wasn't there, it would be sorely missed. So I tell you, your contribution is waiting to be appreciated by so many young ones. When the Iroquois Indians make a decision, as per their instructions from the peacemaker, this great prophet, they make them for the 7th generation. Not for this generation, for the 7th generation. So your drop in the bucket will be appreciated by that generation down. And I encourage us all to gather as we do today and make these little gestures of faith and commitment that we will be part of that great swell. Much love to you all.
There's not a lot to say, but there is a lot to be, and there is a lot to do. So I would urge you to learn increasingly to love yourselves so that you're in a position to love one another, and that you activate on a daily basis in the thoughts, in the words, and the actions that you engage in. There's enough said so far about what needs to be done, and you don't need new information. What you need is inspiration, as I do, to activate what we know and to be fearless about what we know is important. Thank you.
From my perspective, Native American people have been carrying on, even before the Honorable Gandhi, a quiet revolution since they were invaded initially some 500 years ago. And this revolution has quietly and strongly been led by the women. As you've heard so many statements attesting to that today, that the women, my ancestors were here. They were farmers. My grandmother was a farmer. All the women in my family were farmers. Even though I live in the city, I still consider myself basically a farmer, attempting to grow my own food. The women up at Big Mountain, the elders, especially the elder women who are highly honored by their culture, are farmers. They're people of peace. They're maintaining a peaceful revolution to stay on the land that they have always lived upon, that their ancestors lived upon, where their prayers have been centered for generations. And the situation has not changed. There's still the powerful money and greed that guides corporations and the government of the United States to usurp native, gentle, peaceful people off of their lands in order to attain money and power. The ingredients of money are still there and are still active and are very powerful forces that are not... People feel that they are helpless facing these billions of dollars and these huge powers, and yet it's people who are guiding these situations. And so it's people who can change it en masse. And to that effect, the people at Big Mountain maintain that they will still resist being forced off of their land. And I brought a statement from them from a recent meeting that they had. The lawsuit that they filed was filed on behalf of them, of the First Amendment lawsuit, stating that it was a violation of their religious freedom to force them off of their lands, was dismissed in Phoenix by the judge, saying that removing these people from their ancient lands was not violating their religious freedom, that they could still maintain their culture no matter where to, and has been summarily dismissed by agents of the BIA and the government. And they're appealing that now in the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco. But meanwhile, notices have been served to the people that they have to move. They have no choice. And they're still quietly revolting and staying on their land and herding their sheep and growing their corn and maintaining their structures. And that's what's happening now currently. All nations need to respect, first of all, for the land that they live on, that sustains everyone. And the Dene people understand this thoroughly. They're a very sensitive, gentle culture. They understand their land. They understand the implications of the expansion of coal mining and strip mining and uranium mining, where all the nuclear energy is sustained from, on their land, and what will happen to the future generations, the seventh generations, if this continues. And so they continue their evolution. And I urge people to get more involved. I had a statement for someone yesterday which was very disconcerting to me after I had been up this weekend sheep herding on the land, and I came back and was telling a friend of mine about what's currently going on there, and she said, well, it's interesting to hear what you have to say, but it doesn't concern me. It doesn't affect my life at all. And that's absolutely not true. We're all affected. We all belong to a global community. We have no place else out there to go. And Native people of this land have understood that because they have been close to the stars and the earth, the heartbeat of the earth. They listen to the trees, they listen to the animals. They still do. It's not something they used to do in the old days. It's not dead. It's not something you see in the movies. It's alive and well and thriving at the heart of this country. And the destruction of it must stop, or it'll affect all of us. Thank you.
주종의